If you've been watching the channel lately, you may have seen the K-swap build Ben has embarked on with his Civic. That car is going to be very fast. So naturally, not wanting to be outdone, I've decided that it's time to upgrade my Evo, and in order to do that, we're going to tow the car to my good buddies at one of the best Evo shops in the country, RS Motors in Burnsville, Minnesota. Now you should know that chronologically, this series is going to be being filmed a couple weeks after Ben's K-swap series. So if you see the same people in the videos concurrently appearing, don't worry, it's not some kind of parallel dimension situation, it's just a messy continuity. So Ben and I load up the Evo one cold February night, and the next morning we're off to Minnesota. Unlike Ben's massively ambitious engine swap, my goal is a very realistic one. Full bolt-ons and an E85 tune with a new clutch to handle the power and some new parts for better handling. We arrive and the next day begin unloading the car at RS Motors. If you've watched our recent video about modifying Evos, you may already be familiar with Ron and the shop, but if not, just know that these guys know how to build crazy Evos.
Ronnie from RS Motors. We have Ben's Evo here today. We're starting with a pretty basic car with basic bolt-ons, and we're gonna try and max out what we can do with the added parts that we're gonna put in.
Back in late 2017, I had the Evo tuned by my buddy Jermaine at Turbo XS, who is a very experienced tuner himself, and he rang 336 horsepower and 317 foot-pounds of torque out of the car on his Dynapack. Now, let's not get hung up on numbers and start posting about dyno readings and altitude and belt tightness and whatever else in the comments. Horsepower is always relative, and no two dynos will ever read the same. So with this in mind, the first step we have to take is putting Lana on Ronnie's dyno to see what it makes on his Mustang.
So we're gonna see what it makes now on this dyno, on a 2-year-old tune or something like that, and that way we'll be able to compare it once we've done all the modifications we're gonna do and see how much horsepower it's making after we're done, so we can really gauge our progress.
It's worth noting that since the car was last tuned, I've done a couple of breather mods, including an intercooler and piping, that have likely increased the peak horsepower over that 336 we made on Jermaine's dyno, but may have also caused boost spike, creating that rather messy power curve.
That's pretty surprising. Ron, is this less of a heartbreaker? Did you pump the numbers up for me?
It's up there. Healthy engine, all it needs. So power band wise, we have 313 that came in around 6,500. So I'm not too concerned about that. I want this power band to balloon down here, down below. So even if we get the same peak, if we can wake this part of the graph, would make for a lot faster car. We'll fix that. Even now we have room to grow, just the way it is.
What do you think it's gonna make when we're done?
Ugh. On E85?
Yeah.
Depending on boost. If we're restricted to what, 24 pounds? 23?
25.
25.
Yeah.
I don't know, 370, I hope. The torque is what would make a difference, because right now it's 276 torque. That's not much. You need as much torque as you can.
Making over 300 horsepower on a Mustang dyno is definitely neat, given the brand's online reputation of reading significantly lower than other dynos. And it's great to see that after 2 years and tons of track events and a trip to Alaska, Jermaine's tune is still keeping the car healthy. But we're here to make horsepower, and that's exactly what the parts I've collected are going to do. MAPerformance has come on board to help sponsor the series and get me a bunch of parts that I need. So before you guys ask, how can you guys afford to constantly be buying and building cars? Remember that we're YouTubers and stuff is often sponsored, but also we spend almost all of our money on cars or car parts. We afford all of these parts by being poor the rest of the time. So yeah, MAPerformance is my source for almost every part you're going to see going on the Evo in this series, which includes a new Force Performance coated and ported exhaust manifold, an NVIDIA O2 housing and downpipe, an in-house MAP high-flow cat, fuel injector clinic, 1200cc injectors, a slew of white line bushings and sway bars, and the crown jewel, an XD twin disc clutch to make sure that I never burn out a clutch again.
We're gonna add some parts to it, put E85, a lot of bolt-ons just to maximize what the stock turbo is capable of doing, even with still stock cams and stock short block. The head gasket to refresh the motor, upgrade head studs since we'll be pushing a little bit more boost than what it was tuned for and running E85. With E85 on this car with more boost, we're going to upgrade the injectors and fuel pump to make sure they can keep up. For the stock turbo, which is max, should be around 400 on our dyno here. And for injectors, we're going with the FIC 1200cc paired with the Warbro 255 can do a 450 wheel horsepower setup.
So a lot of you out there might be wondering, hey Ben, why are you doing all of these mods but you're not doing the most important things for making more power, which is a bigger turbo and more boost? And the reason for that is you'll find out. At the end of both of our build series, the Civic and the Evo, we will explain exactly why we built both of these cars the way that we did, and we have a good reason. But for right now, no big turbo. That will come later, but not right now.
For drivetrain, we're going with the ZE twin disc setup. We've found these clutches to be one of the best out there for drivability and holding power. When it comes to launching the car and getting the car to drive on the street easier, I believe the twin disc is the best one. I plan to get the head off first, get going on that, get it resurfaced, get it prepped and ready to go back in. While that's off, I plan to get the transmission out to get the clutch replaced. And then from there, we're gonna tackle the suspension and see how much we can get done. As far as looking at it, it's pretty straightforward. Pending issues that we come up with as we take the car apart. So hopefully there's nothing there, but you know, it always happens as any project goes, but we should be able to take care of it.
After a quick wash to get the schmutz of travel off, Ronnie starts getting to work on the first step of the build, pulling the head. Since the engine has almost 130,000 miles on it, we want to pull the head to resurface it and replace the head gasket, just to make sure that the engine will be ready to hold the increased boost pressure and horsepower that we're going to be throwing at it. While Ron and Paul, another Evo expert and the shop's only other employee, start disassembling the engine bay and drivetrain, I check in on my weight loss program.
This is the exhaust that was on the car. So we had a Megan downpipe that I actually did just fine for like 4 years or something. Ben actually welded this O2 bung in there, so good job, Ben.
It's the best looking part of this.
Yeah, very, very clean weld for sure. All right, that's enough of that. That's enough of that. And then this is a Busher single piece JDM length. I've never really liked the way it looks. It's pretty quiet, which I guess is nice. But so this is what we're going with. This is a NVIDIA downpipe, big NVIDIA O2 housing, an MAP high flow cat, which I wasn't previously able to run, but I'm very excited to be able to run a high flow cat again, because cats are good. Cats save the environment. The good stuff, we've got some Tomei titanium stuff. Like all of this together probably weighs like 10 pounds maybe, as opposed to this big catback that probably weighs like 30 or something. So
I think the real reason we're doing this is because of that burnt tip. You need them scene points.
It's for the scene points. Yeah, it's for the drift cannon for sure. So we just did a baseline weight for my corporeal form, which is 193 pounds. And then with the big single piece, we're at 223. So we added 30 pounds. This is 30 pounds. Feels like 30 pounds. And then the Tomei with the high flow cat, 210. So 13 pounds lighter. So it's what, 193, 17 pounds. 17 pounds with the what, stainless cat? Yeah, so tight.
We're just removing a stock car, 130,000 miles, unmodified, and it's showing a crack inside a manifold here. They're prone to crack, you know, as you go through a lot of heat. You don't really see that since it's on the it's on the inside, but it's about the worst of it. We are replacing that with a piece from FP, which is a cast manifold, which makes it really good. Equal size runners, not equal length. Free flowing, ported, coated. Should last for a long time. And I think they're better than any tubular out there since it's a cast manifold. There's no welds. There's nothing to break really. It might eventually crack over time, but this will promote fast spool, not any less than this one, since it's a nice short runner, and it should be good for power. I unbolted the housing. Oh, okay.
Meanwhile, the head has come off of the 4G63. Both the valves and pistons look to be in good shape, which is reassuring, and Paul starts cleaning the head to prep it for resurfacing. But it's right about this time that we discover a pretty big problem.
So this was not part of the original game plan when we came here, but way back when I bought this car, I got it wrecked. Whoever had owned it previously, I got it from a junkyard, but whoever had owned it before them had put it into a curb or something at a pretty high speed because it had broken the control arm, it had broken the spindle, it had broken that axle, tie rod, all that stuff. So I took it to a frame shop to get the frame pulled back because all this stuff had been pushed in a little bit. And they pulled it out, but they didn't pull it out all the way. So for the longest time I've known that my suspension can only get so much camber dialed in on the driver's side in the front. So we've looked at it and the subframe is bent here. The frame itself is pushed in a little bit still. So what we're gonna do is Ron has a new subframe that I'm gonna buy from him and put in, and so we're gonna take it to a frame shop and see if we can get it pulled back to straight. That would be the biggest change for me with the car from this trip, regardless of horsepower or parts or whatever. It's not necessarily a safety issue at the moment. I've done a bunch of track days on it. I drove it to Alaska and back, and I have never had any issues. But if I could dial more camber in on this side and have an alignment that matches on both sides and not have to hamstring myself by running less camber on that side to match this side, that would be huge. If I can run 3 degrees of camber instead of 2.3, that will give me more ability to corner, hypothetically speaking, at the track. So that would make the car faster. So and that is very, very important. That's just as important as horsepower. So hopefully we can make that happen.
As far as looking at it, it's pretty straightforward, pending issues that we come up with as we take the car apart.
Like an Old Testament prophet, Ronnie has accurately predicted that this very straightforward build would hit unexpected roadblocks, and this is definitely shaping up to be one.
So when Ben and I were planning to run his Civic series and the Evo series concurrently, I thought it was going to be kind of underwhelming since Ben's Civic was getting an engine swap and I was just getting a couple of bolt-on parts. Things are getting a little bit out of hand and progressing a little bit further than we had initially planned. In order to do the frame, we were actually going to drop the motor out of the car so that we have the most amount of room to work on the frame, which means that the engine is now coming out and we just have a rolling shell. So going a lot further than we had anticipated.
So Ron gets to work replacing the block and transmission as a unit, and I begin replacing the worn rotor rings on the DBA 2-piece rotors with fresh replacements from MAP. Paul surfaces the freshly cleaned head.
You always want to start with a fresh surface. You don't want the risk of blowing a head gasket because of uneven surface. Obviously, as you can see, we took tooth owl off of this, and we don't see any low spots, which is good. That means we were good. We were able to use the head and good to go. The block is typically, on a 4G63, it's hard for them to warp unless they're overheated. Obviously this car was stock, so I didn't see that much heat through it.
He's about to pull the motor. How's it going over there with your brake rotor?
Ronnie can pull a motor in about as much time as it takes me to put together one 2-piece rotor.
Watching them lower the heart of the car onto the floor, I start to feel a slight ping of panic. We'd only budgeted 2 days for what was supposed to be a very simple handful of upgrades. Are we really going to be able to get the frame straightened, drivetrain reinstalled, and car tuned all in a single day tomorrow? But simultaneously, it's extremely exciting. Knowing the car had a tweaked frame has always bothered me, and now is the perfect time to fix it. And hey, if the car's already completely disassembled at this point, why not throw on a few more parts while we're in there?